Maya stood in the station's main engineering bay, surrounded by a mixed group of human and alien technicians working frantically to implement her desperate plan. Nexus Station would become the largest trap in galactic history, but only if they could complete the modifications before the Reaper fleet arrived. "We need to evacuate all non-essential personnel first," she explained to the assembled team. "Once we start the modifications, the station will become extremely dangerous. Only volunteers should remain." To her surprise, almost everyone volunteered to stay. Ketris stepped forward first, her crystalline form catching the light as she spoke. "You saved my life when you warned about the system failures," she said. "Now I want to help save everyone else." Velthos nodded his furry head in agreement. "My people were once called too emotional to contribute to galactic society. Perhaps emotion is exactly what we need now." Even Kethmar, the Vorthon cadet, who had always resented Maya's presence, raised one of his 4 hands. "I was wrong about humans," he said simply. "If this is how we make our stand, then I will stand with you." Maya felt a lump form in her throat as she looked around at the faces of beings who had once considered her a dangerous primitive. Now they were willing to risk their lives based on her plan. The modifications required turning the station's power grid into a massive explosive device while making it look like normal operations to approaching enemy sensors. Maya worked with Dr. Grant through the quantum link, coordinating with human engineers back on Earth who were frantically calculating power loads and containment fields. "The reactor core will need to be manually overloaded," Grant's voice explained through the communication system. "The safety protocols are too sophisticated to bypass remotely. Someone will have to go into the core chamber and trigger the sequence." Maya understood what that meant. Whoever went into the reactor core would not be coming back out. The radiation levels during an overload would be instantly fatal to any known species. "I'll do it," she said quietly, but loud enough for her team to hear. "No," Velthos protested immediately. "There must be another way." "We can set up a delayed trigger," Ketris suggested. "Give whoever goes in there time to get to a safe distance." Maya shook her head. "The Reapers are too smart. If we give them time to detect what we're doing, they'll pull back and attack from range. The trigger has to be manual and immediate." Commander Ninth Ara entered the engineering bay as they were making final preparations. The Zalani officer had been coordinating the evacuation of civilian personnel and looked exhausted from the effort. "The Reaper fleet has been detected on long-range sensors," she reported. 237 ships, including their command dreadnought. They'll be here in 6 hours. Maya nodded and turned back to her work. 6 hours to finish modifying a space station into a weapon, then convince one of the most dangerous enemy fleets in galactic history to come close enough for the trap to work. The next few hours passed in a blur of technical modifications and tactical preparations. Maya's team worked to disguise their sabotage as normal maintenance, while the remaining Council ships took positions that would make them look like a traditional defensive formation. As the Reaper fleet approached, Maya made her way to the station's command center for what might be her final briefing. High Counselor Zethkar was there, looking older and more fragile than ever, but his resolve was unshaken. "Are you certain this will work?" he asked Maya as they watched the enemy fleet on the tactical displays. "No," Maya admitted. "But it's our best chance. Maybe our only chance." The Reapers arrived exactly as Maya had predicted, their ships moving in the aggressive formations that had swept aside every Council defense for weeks. Their commander clearly expected another easy victory, against traditional defensive tactics. Maya watched the displays as the enemy fleet moved into position around the station. The Reapers were confident enough to bring their command ships within the trap's range, just as she had hoped. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. "The Reaper commander wants to discuss surrender terms." "Put him through," Zethkar ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a terrifying figure in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. When the Reaper commander spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of conquest. "Council leaders," he said with obvious contempt, "your pathetic resistance has entertained us, but now it ends. Surrender your station, and your lives will be spared for slave labor." High Counselor Zethkar straightened to his full height, all four arms spread in a gesture of defiance. "We are the Galactic Council, guardians of peace and civilization. We do not surrender to barbaric raiders." The Reaper commander laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Peace and civilization. Pretty. Words from beings who have forgotten how to fight. We will enjoy showing you the true meaning of power." The transmission ended, and Maya felt the familiar calm that came before action. Everything was in place. The enemy was where she needed them to be. Now came the hardest part. "I'm going to the reactor core," she announced to the command center. "Maya, wait," Captain Morrison said, grabbing her arm. "There has to be another way." Maya looked at the man who had been her mentor and friend during the darkest weeks of her life. "You told me I was representing all of humanity here. This is how humans protect the people we care about." She made her way through the stations, corridors as the first enemy shots began impacting the outer shields. The trap was working perfectly. The Reapers were so confident of victory that they were moving their entire fleet into range for a devastating final assault. The reactor core chamber was a cathedral of humming energy, with massive containment fields glowing like captured stars. Maya approached the manual control panel and began entering the shutdown codes that would turn all that contained power into an uncontainable explosion. Her communicator crackled with voices from friends throughout the station. Veltos was coordinating final evacuations, Ketris was maintaining the disguised weapon systems, and even Kethmar was helping with damage control as Reaper fire intensified. "Maya," Veltos's voice came through clearly. "The enemy commander has figured out what we're doing. He's ordering his ships to pull back." Maya's hands flew over the controls, racing to complete the overload sequence before the Reapers could escape. Warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber as containment fields started to destabilize. "I'm not going to make it out of here," she told her communicator. "Tell everyone that it was an honor to serve with them." "Wait," Ketris's voice interrupted. "I'm reading a maintenance tunnel that leads from the core chamber to the outer ring. If you can reach it before the overload peaks, the emergency blast doors might protect you." Maya looked at her display and saw the tunnel entrance on the far side of the chamber. It was a long shot, but it was better than no shot at all. She completed the overload sequence and began running toward the tunnel as alarms blared throughout the station. Behind her, the reactor core began building toward the massive energy release that would destroy everything within 1,000 kilometers. The tunnel was narrow and filled with pipes and conduits, but Maya squeezed through as fast as she could. Move. Emergency blast doors were sealing automatically as radiation levels spiked throughout the station. She made it to the outer ring just as the reactor core exploded, turning Nexus Station into a brief new star. The blast caught most of the Reaper fleet while they were still trying to retreat, vaporizing their command ships and sending the survivors fleeing in panic. Maya found herself in an emergency shelter with dozens of other survivors, including many of the alien cadets who had learned to trust her leadership. They were battered and exhausted, but they were alive, and the galaxy was safe. High Counselor Zethkar found her in the medical bay several hours later, where she was being treated for radiation exposure. His usual composure was completely gone, replaced by something that looked like wonder. "Maya Rodriguez of Earth," he said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer you our deepest apologies for the way you were treated, and our eternal gratitude for what you have accomplished." Maya tried to sit up straighter but winced at the movement. "I just did what needed to be done." "No," Zethkar said, shaking his head. "You did what none of us could do. You showed us that sometimes protecting peace requires the courage to fight for it." The aftermath of the battle brought changes that rippled throughout galactic society. The Council voted unanimously to establish the first integrated military academy, with officers from all member species learning human tactical methods alongside traditional peacekeeping approaches. Maya was offered the position of youngest instructor in Academy history, tasked with teaching the next generation of Council officers how to balance peaceful ideals with practical preparedness. She accepted, knowing that her real work was just beginning. Months later, she stood before a class of new cadets from dozens of species, including several young humans who had followed her example by applying to the academy. The prejudice was not completely gone, but it was fading as practical cooperation replaced ancient assumptions. The galaxy learned something important during the Reaper War, she told her students. "Strength doesn't come from advanced technology or..." Maya stood before the assembled council leaders in the station's war room, feeling the weight of their desperate attention. The elegant chamber had been hastily converted into a command center, with tactical displays showing the advancing Reaper. Forces that continued to sweep through council space like a plague. "Your conventional strategies are failing because you're fighting an enemy that doesn't follow your rules," Maya explained, gesturing to the displays. "The Reapers have studied your tactics for centuries. They know exactly how you'll respond to every situation." High Counselor Zethkar leaned forward, his four arms clasped tightly together. "What do you propose we do differently?" "Hit and run attacks," Maya said. "Instead of trying to stop them with massive defensive formations, we use small, fast groups to strike at their supply lines and retreat before they can respond. We make them chase us instead of letting them choose the battlefield." Commander Nithara, who had dismissed Maya's concerns for weeks, now listened carefully to every word. "But our ships are not designed for such tactics. They are built for stability and defense, not rapid maneuvers." "Then we modify them," Maya said. "Strip away the non-essential systems, add more engines and armor, focus on speed and firepower instead of comfort and ceremony." The council leaders exchanged uncertain glances. Maya could see them struggling with the idea of abandoning thousands of years of tradition. But the reports of destroyed colonies and captured worlds spoke louder than pride. "I need to contact Dr. Lisa Grant back on Earth," Maya continued. "She can help coordinate with human engineers to design the modifications we need. Humans have experience making ships work under combat conditions." Within hours, Maya found herself working around the clock with a mixed team of human and alien engineers. Dr. Grant's voice came through the quantum communication system as she guided them through rapid retrofit procedures that would have been unthinkable just days before. "Remove the decorative hull plating," Grant's voice crackled through the speakers. "It's beautiful, but it creates weak points where enemy fire can penetrate. Replace it with overlapping armor segments that can absorb impacts. Maya worked alongside Velthos and a growing group of alien cadets who had volunteered to help with the modifications. Even Ketris was there, her crystalline hands surprisingly skilled at precision welding work. "I never thanked you for saving Poldrin," Ketris said quietly as they worked on reinforcing a ship's hull. "I thought you were dangerous, but I was wrong. You see threats because you care about protecting people." Maya smiled as she continued working. "My people learned the hard way that peace has to be defended. We made a lot of mistakes, but we also learned how to survive." The first test of Maya's new tactics came when a Reaper scouting force approached one of the outer mining stations. Instead of sending a large defensive fleet to protect the station, Maya proposed using 3 modified council ships to ambush the scouts before they could report back to the main force. She found herself assigned to lead one of the attack squadrons, working with pilots who had never fought in actual combat. Her wingmates were nervous but determined, and Maya did her best to project confidence she did not entirely feel. "Remember, we hit fast and get out faster," she told them over the communication system as they approached the ambush point. "Don't try to destroy every enemy ship. Just hurt them enough to make them retreat, then we disappear before reinforcements arrive." The attack went better than Maya had dared to hope. The Reaper scouts were expecting traditional council tactics and were caught completely off guard by the sudden assault from multiple directions. 2 enemy ships were destroyed, and the rest fled back toward their main fleet, carrying reports of new and unpredictable council behavior. Word of the successful ambush spread quickly through the council forces, bringing hope for the first time since the war began. More ships volunteered for modification, and commanders who had been rigidly following traditional formations began experimenting with Maya's flexible approach. Commander Neith Ara found Maya in the engineering bay after the Yasib 3rd successful raid, where she was helping to plan the next wave of ship modifications. "I owe you an apology," the Zalani officer said, her crystalline features showing obvious regret. "I dismissed your warnings because I could not accept that a young human might understand warfare better than experienced council strategists." "You weren't wrong to be cautious," Maya replied, not looking up from her work. "My people do come from a violent world. The difference is that we learned from our violence instead of just being proud of avoiding it." Nithara nodded and moved to help with the modifications. "Teach me," she said simply. "Show me how to think like a warrior instead of a peacekeeper." Over the following days, Maya worked with Nithara and other council officers to develop new tactical approaches. They studied human military history, learning about concepts like strategic retreat, asymmetric warfare, and battlefield adaptation that had never been necessary in the peaceful galaxy. Scholar Velthos proved invaluable in this effort, his ability to see problems from unexpected angles helping to bridge the gap between human experience and alien thinking. Together, they developed hybrid strategies that combined council technology with human tactical flexibility. "The Reapers have been studying our old ways for centuries," Velthos observed during one of their planning sessions. "But they know nothing about human methods because humans were not part of the galaxy when they left." Maya realized he was right. The Reapers had prepared for war against the council they remembered, not the new alliance that included humanity. This gave them a crucial advantage, but only if they could convince more council forces to abandon their traditional approaches. The breakthrough came when Maya's modified squadrons successfully destroyed a major Reaper supply convoy, forcing the enemy to slow their advance while they established new logistics lines. The victory proved that human tactics could work on a larger scale, and requests for tactical advisors began pouring in from Council fleets across the galaxy. But the Reapers were learning too. Their commanders began adapting to the new Council strategies, developing countermeasures, and adjusting their own approaches. Maya realized that their advantage would not last long unless they could deliver a decisive blow. The opportunity came when intelligence reports revealed that the main Reaper fleet was converging on Nexus Station itself. The enemy had decided to eliminate the Council's primary military academy and the source of these troublesome new tactics. "They're bringing everything they have," Captain Morrison reported during an emergency briefing. "Over 200 ships, including their command vessels. If they take the station, they'll control this entire sector." Maya studied the projected enemy formation and felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. The Reapers were not just coming to capture the station. They were coming to end the war. "We can't stop them with conventional defenses," she told the assembled officers. "Even with our modifications, we don't have enough ships to match their firepower." "Then what do you suggest?" High Counselor Zethkar asked, his voice carrying the weight of desperation. Maya looked around the room at the faces of beings who had once dismissed her as a primitive Deathworlder. Now they hung on her every word, hoping she could find a solution that their advanced civilizations had missed. "We turn the station itself into a weapon," she said. "If we can't beat them in space, we make them come to us, and then we take them down with us." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya had just proposed something that no Council species had ever considered in 3,000 years of peace. She was asking them to sacrifice their most precious institution to save their civilization. "Explain," Zethkar said finally. Maya took a deep breath and began outlining the most desperate plan she had ever conceived. The first reports came in during Maya's morning engineering class. Scholar Velthos was teaching a group of cadets about power distribution systems when his communicator began flashing with urgent messages. His furry face grew pale as he read the incoming data. "Class is dismissed," he said quietly, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by obvious worry. "Return to your dormitories immediately and await further instructions." Maya gathered her materials and hurried toward the communication center where she had been spending her punishment hours. Other cadets filled the corridors, all moving with the same confused urgency. Nobody seemed to know what was happening, but everyone could feel that something was terribly wrong. The communication center was chaos when Maya arrived. Officers and technicians crowded around display screens, showing sensor readings and emergency transmissions from across Council space. Captain Morrison was there, his face grim as he coordinated with Earth Command. "What's happening?" Maya asked, pushing through. "The crowd to reach him. The unknown fleet you detected," Morrison said without looking away from his screen. "They're not visitors. 3 outer colonies have gone dark in the last hour. No distress calls, no evacuation signals. Just silence." Maya felt her stomach drop. The approaching ships had revealed themselves as the Void Reapers, a nomadic warrior, species that the Council believed had been extinct for centuries. They had spent that time in the galaxy's outer rim, growing stronger and more ruthless, and now they wanted Council space for themselves. On the main display screen, High Counselor Zethkar was addressing the Academy. His usual composed demeanor was cracking under obvious stress. "Cadets, we face an unprecedented situation," he said, his forearms gesturing nervously. "The beings calling themselves Void Reapers have attacked several of our outer settlements. We are implementing emergency protocols and calling upon all Council fleets to respond." Maya watched as tactical displays showed Council ships moving to intercept the Reaper advance. The formations looked impressive on paper, but Maya recognized immediately that they were designed for ceremonial displays rather than actual combat. The Council's military had not fought a real war in 3,000 years. The first battle reports confirmed her worst fears. Council ships that had been built for exploration and peaceful missions were no match for the Reaper's brutal efficiency. Elegant Vorthan cruisers with beautiful crystalline hulls shattered under concentrated fire. Zalani defensive squadrons that relied on coordinated energy shields found themselves overwhelmed by unpredictable attack patterns. Within hours, the Reaper fleet had broken through 2 defensive lines and was advancing rapidly toward the inner systems. Panic spread through Nexus Station as reports of destroyed ships and captured colonies continued to arrive. Maya found herself in the Academy's main corridor when the station's defensive alerts began blaring. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and automated voices announced that all cadets should report to their assigned emergency stations. The problem was that nobody seemed to remember where those stations were or what they were supposed to do when they got there. Alien cadets ran in confused circles, some crying, others frozen with fear. The instructors were no better, huddled in groups trying to contact their superiors for guidance that was not coming. Maya realized that despite all their advanced technology and peaceful wisdom, none of these beings had any idea how to handle a real crisis. "Listen to me," Maya shouted, climbing onto a bench so she could be seen over the crowd. "Everyone needs to calm down and follow emergency procedures." "You have no authority here, Deathworlder," Kethmar called out, but his voice shook with fear. "We do not take orders from primitives." "Then keep panicking and see how that works out for you," Maya snapped back. She jumped down from the bench and began organizing the cadets into groups based on their specialties. Engineering students went to maintain critical systems, communications specialists headed to the message center, and medical cadets reported to the infirmary. To her surprise, most of the alien cadets followed her directions. Even Ketris, her crystalline roommate who had never spoken to her before, nodded and headed toward the technical section with the other engineering students. The station shuddered as its defensive grid came online, but Maya knew from her earlier analysis that the shields would not hold against a sustained attack. She made her way to the main engineering deck, where she found chaos among the technical staff. "The primary defensive grid is failing," one of the Zalani engineers reported to his supervisor. "We are losing power to the outer shield generators." Maya looked at the diagnostic displays and immediately saw the problem. The system failure she had warned about weeks ago was happening exactly as she had predicted. Outdated software and untested backup systems were collapsing under the stress of actual use. "I know how to fix this," she said, pushing toward the main control panel. "Stand back, cadet," the chief engineer ordered. "This is not a training exercise." "No, it's exactly what I warned you about," Maya said, pulling out her old data pad with the vulnerability analysis. "The power routing is failing because the backup systems were never properly integrated. I can reroute through the secondary conduits, but I need access to the main controls." The chief engineer looked at her data and then at the failing systems around them. Another shudder ran through the station as more shield generators went offline. "Do it," he said, stepping aside. Maya's fingers flew over the alien controls, implementing solutions she had worked out weeks ago during her lonely study sessions. She rerouted power around the failing systems, activated backup generators that had been offline for decades, and reconfigured the defensive grid to work around its design flaws. The station's shields stabilized just as the first Reaper scouts appeared on long-range sensors. Maya felt a moment of pride before realizing that her repairs had only bought them time. The real attack was still coming. Throughout the station, word began to spread about what the human cadet had done. Cadets who had ignored her for weeks started looking at her with something approaching respect. Even some of the instructors began asking for her advice on emergency procedures. Captain Morrison found her in the engineering section where she was working with Velthos and a team of other cadets to strengthen the station's defenses. "High Counselor Zethkar wants to see you," Morrison said. "He's finally ready to admit that the Council needs human expertise." Maya followed Morrison to the command center, where she found the High Counselor looking older and more fragile than she had ever seen him. His silver skin had lost its usual glow, and his 4 arms moved with nervous uncertainty. "Cadet Rodriguez," he said when she approached, "it appears that your warnings about our defensive systems were accurate. We find ourselves in need of your people's experience with warfare." Maya wanted to point out that she had tried to warn them weeks ago, but this was not the time for arguments. "What do you need me to do?" "Help us understand how to fight these Reapers," Zethkar said. "Our strategies are not working. Our ships are designed for peace, not war. We need to learn from your people's history of conflict." Maya looked around. The command center at the displays showing Reaper forces advancing steadily toward the core systems. Council fleets were retreating on every front, unable to match the enemy's aggression and tactical flexibility. "The problem is that you're fighting like you're still at peace," Maya said. "You're using formations and strategies that work for parades and ceremonies, not actual combat. The Reapers know this, and they're using your predictability against you." She moved to the central tactical display and began pointing out the Council's weaknesses. "Your ships are beautiful, but they're too fragile. Your formations are elegant, but they're too rigid. Your commanders are brilliant, but they think too much and act too slowly." "Then what do you suggest?" Zethkar asked. Maya took a deep breath. She was about to propose something that would go against 3,000 years of Council tradition. "Stop trying to fight like civilized beings," she said. "Start fighting like survivors." Maya walked into her advanced systems class the next morning with her datapad clutched tightly in her hand. She had spent half the night reviewing her findings about the station's defensive weaknesses, making sure every detail was correct. Her instructor, Commander Nithara, was a Zalani military strategist with a reputation for precision and discipline. The classroom was filled with the usual mix of alien cadets, all of whom had grown comfortable ignoring Maya's presence. She took her seat in the back row and waited for the right moment to speak. Commander Nithara was explaining the theoretical foundations of galactic defense networks when Maya finally raised her hand. "Commander, I found some problems with the station's defensive systems," Maya said, standing up with her datapad. "There are vulnerabilities in the power grid and sensor array that could be exploited." The commander's crystalline features shifted into what Maya had learned was the Zalani expression for annoyance. "Cadet Rodriguez, we are discussing theory, not conducting amateur technical reviews." "But these are real problems," Maya insisted, walking toward the front of the class. "The backup systems haven't been tested in decades, and the main computers are running outdated software. An enemy could easily find ways through our defenses." Commander Nithara took the datapad and glanced at it briefly before handing it back. "Cadet, your species comes from a world where you see threats everywhere. This is what we call Deathworld conditioning. You have been trained to expect attack and violence because that is all your people have ever known." The other cadets in the class began to whisper and nod in agreement. Maya felt her face grow hot with embarrassment and frustration. The Council's defensive systems have protected us for 3 millennia without a single successful attack, the commander continued. Perhaps instead of looking for problems that do not exist, you should focus on learning from the peaceful wisdom of civilized species. Maya sat down heavily, her datapad feeling worthless in her hands. She had found real security flaws, but nobody would listen because she was human. The rest of the class passed in a blur of theoretical discussions about defensive strategies that sounded impressive, but ignored practical realities. After class, Maya walked alone through the corridors, toward the technical section. She needed to understand more about how the alien technology worked, even if her instructors would not take her seriously. The other cadets had gone to social gatherings and study groups that she was not invited to join. In the engineering bay, she found Scholar Velthos working quietly at a diagnostic station. The small, furry Kethmori looked up from his work when Maya approached. His large, dark eyes were curious rather than hostile, which was more than she usually got from other aliens. "You are the human cadet," he said in his soft, musical voice. "I have heard much discussion about you." "Probably nothing good," Maya replied, setting down her datapad on a nearby workbench. Velthos tilted his head, a gesture that reminded Maya of a curious cat. "Actually, I find the discussions quite interesting. Most of my classmates dismiss you because you come from a death world, but I wonder if they are missing something important." Maya looked at him with surprise. This was the first time any alien student had spoken to her without obvious prejudice. "My people were once dismissed as well," Velthos continued, returning to his work on a complicated piece of machinery. "The Council said we were too emotional, too impulsive to contribute to galactic society. It took many years for us to prove our worth." "How did you do it?" Maya asked. "We showed them that emotion can lead to innovation," Velthos said. "While other species focused on maintaining what already existed, we created new solutions to old problems. Perhaps your people have a similar gift." Maya spent the next hour working alongside Velthos, learning about the station's systems from someone who actually listened to her questions. He was brilliant in ways that her other classmates were not, able to see problems from unexpected angles and find creative solutions. The next few weeks fell into a difficult routine. Maya attended classes where she was ignored or dismissed, ate meals alone while other cadets avoided her table, and spent her evenings studying systems that nobody else cared to understand. Captain Morrison checked on her regularly, offering encouragement and advice, but even he seemed worried about how slowly her acceptance was progressing. The breakthrough came during a routine training exercise in the Academy's simulation center. Maya was assigned to a team with 3 other cadets for a basic rescue scenario. Their mission was to evacuate civilians from a damaged space station before its life support failed. The team leader was a young Vorthon named Kethmar, who clearly resented having a human on his team. He assigned Maya to monitor communications, while the others handled what he considered the important tasks. Maya accepted her role without complaint, but she kept watching the simulation's environmental readings on her display. 10 minutes into the exercise, Maya noticed something the others had missed. The gravity generator in Section 7 was showing instability patterns that could lead to a catastrophic failure. If it collapsed, anyone in that area would be crushed instantly. "We need to evacuate Section 7 immediately," Maya called out to her team leader. "Stick to your assigned duties, Deathworlder," Kethmar replied without looking at her readings. "We are following proper evacuation procedures." Maya watched in horror as one of her teammates, A young Ashken cadet named Poldren entered Section 7 to retrieve a group of simulated civilians. The gravity readings were getting worse by the second. Without waiting for permission, Maya abandoned her post and ran toward Section 7. She reached Poldren just as the gravity generator began to fail, tackling him out of the danger zone as heavy debris crashed down where he had been standing. The simulation ended immediately, and alarms began blaring throughout the center. Instructors rushed in to assess what had happened, and Maya found herself facing a panel of angry alien teachers who wanted to know why she had abandoned her post. "I saved his life," Maya said, pointing to Poldren, who was still shaking from his close call. "The gravity generator was about to fail. I could see it in the readings." "You disrupted a carefully planned exercise," said one instructor. "Your reckless behavior could have endangered everyone." "My behavior saved someone from being crushed," Maya shot back. "If you had listened to my warnings about system vulnerabilities, you would know that these failures are possible." The instructors exchanged glances that Maya had learned meant they were communicating through their mental links. Finally, the senior instructor spoke. "Cadet Rodriguez, your actions show a dangerous tendency toward independent thinking that undermines proper military discipline. You will report for additional training in following orders." Maya wanted to scream. She had prevented a serious injury, possibly even a death, and they were punishing her for it. As she left the simulation center, she noticed Poldren following her. "Thank you," the young Ashken said quietly. "I know what you did for me." It was a small comfort, but Maya held on to it as she made her way back to her room. At least one person understood that she was trying to help, even if the instructors refused to see it. That night, long-range sensors detected something approaching the outer edge of council space. Maya was in the communications center serving her punishment duty when the first reports came in. A fleet of unknown ships was moving toward the inner systems at high speed. Maya studied the sensor readings and felt a chill run down her spine. The formation patterns looked familiar from her studies of human military history. These were not traders or explorers. These ships were arranged for attack, with heavy vessels in the center and fast scouts on the flanks. She tried to report her observations to the duty officer, but he dismissed her concerns with the same tired explanation about Deathworld paranoia. The Council's response was to send a standard diplomatic greeting and prepare a welcome ceremony for the approaching visitors. Maya watched the screens and prayed she was wrong about what she was seeing. But deep in her heart, she knew that trouble was coming to the peaceful galaxy, and nobody was prepared for what was about to happen. Maya Rodriguez stepped off the transport ship and felt her stomach drop. The massive space station stretched out before her like a crystal city floating in the void. Nexus Station was home to the Galactic Council's premier military academy, and she was the first human ever accepted here. The corridors buzzed with alien cadets who stopped to stare at her as she walked past. Her boots clicked against the smooth metal floor as she followed the floating guide marker toward the dormitory section. Everywhere she looked, she saw beings she had only read about in Earth's xenobiology texts. Tall blue Vorthans with 4 arms gestured gracefully as they spoke. Crystalline Zelani caught the light and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. Small fuzzy Kethmori scurried about with data pads clutched in their tiny hands. Maya tried to smile at a group of cadets near the lift, but they turned away and whispered among themselves. She caught fragments of their conversation through her universal translator. Deathworlder was a word she heard several times, along with primitive and dangerous. The dormitory assignment board showed her room number in bright green letters, room 847, shared with someone named Ketris of the Zelani species. Maya found the door and pressed her palm to the scanner. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Her roommate was already there, sitting cross-legged on what appeared to be a floating meditation mat. Ketris looked like a living sculpture made of clear blue crystal, with faceted features that caught and reflected the room's soft lighting. When Maya entered, the alien's head turned toward her, but no greeting came. "Hi, I'm Maya Rodriguez from Earth," she said, setting down her single bag of belongings. "I guess we're roommates." Ketris stood up smoothly and walked to the other side of the room without saying a word. The crystal being began arranging items on her desk with precise movements, clearly ignoring Maya's presence. Maya unpacked her few possessions in silence. A photo of her family back in Texas, some basic tools from her engineering studies, and a small Earth flag her little brother had given her. She placed the flag on her desk and noticed Ketris glance at it with what might have been disgust. The next morning, Maya made her way to the orientation assembly. The main auditorium was enormous, with thousands of seats arranged in a perfect spiral around a central stage. She found an empty seat near the back and sat down, feeling very alone. Among all the alien faces, High Counselor Zethkar took the stage. He was a Vorthan, tall and imposing with silver skin that seemed to glow under the lights. His four arms moved in elegant patterns as he spoke, and his voice carried easily through the vast space. "Welcome, cadets, to the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy," he began. "For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace among the stars. You are here to learn how to protect that peace and serve the greater good of all civilized species." Maya listened carefully as he described the Academy's history and traditions. Everything sounded wonderful until his tone changed. "This year, we have admitted our first cadet from the species known as humans," Zethkar said, his eyes finding Maya in the crowd. "Their world is what we call a death world, where violence and struggle are the norm. We have accepted this cadet as an experiment, to see if beings from such a harsh environment can learn to embrace the peaceful ways of civilized society." Thousands of alien eyes turned to stare at Maya. She felt her face burn with embarrassment and anger. She was not an experiment. She was a person who had worked harder than anyone else to earn her place here. "We must remember that not all species develop the same way," Zethkar continued. "Some focus on harmony and cooperation. Others, unfortunately, develop through constant conflict and aggression. It remains to be seen whether such beings can truly join our peaceful alliance." The rest of the orientation passed in a blur. Maya barely heard the details about class schedules and academy rules. She was too busy feeling the weight of every stare, every whispered comment from the cadets around her. After the assembly, she tried to join a group of cadets who were discussing their first tactical simulation class. They stopped talking when she approached and drifted away without a word. Maya stood alone in the corridor watching them form new groups that clearly did not include her. Her first classes were even worse. In basic galactic history, the instructor spent an entire hour describing how primitive warfare cultures had to be carefully guided toward civilization. In strategic planning, the teacher paired students for exercises but left Maya without a partner, saying she could observe and learn instead. The worst moment came during lunch. Maya sat alone at a table, eating something that was supposed to taste like chicken but definitely did not. Captain Jake Morrison, the human liaison officer, approached her table. "Mind if I sit?" he asked in English. Maya nodded gratefully. It was the first friendly voice she had heard all day. Morrison was older, probably in his 40s, with graying hair and kind eyes. He had been at the academy for 2 years, trying to build relationships between humans and the other species. Maya had met him briefly during her application process back on Earth. "Rough first day?" he asked. "They think I'm some kind of dangerous animal," Maya said quietly. "The High Counselor basically called humans violent primitives in front of everyone." Morrison sighed. "I won't lie to you, Maya. It's going to be hard. Most of these species have never faced real conflict. They've lived in peace so long they've forgotten what it takes to survive. To them, our history of wars and struggles makes us seem barbaric." "But we're not barbaric," Maya protested. "We've learned from our mistakes. That's why we want to join the galaxy, to be better." "I know that, and you know that," Morrison said. "But they need proof. They need to see that humans can contribute something valuable to their perfect little society." Maya poked at her fake chicken. "What if I can't do it? What if I just prove them right?" Morrison leaned forward. "Listen to me, Maya. You're not just representing yourself here. You're representing all of humanity. Every human who will ever apply to this academy, every human ship that wants to dock at a council station, every human colony that needs council protection. The weight is heavy, but you're strong enough to carry it." That evening, Maya walked through the quiet corridors of the academy's technical section. She had always found comfort in understanding how things worked, and the alien technology fascinated her even as it frustrated her classmates. While other cadets socialized in the common areas, she studied the station's systems. The defensive grid caught her attention. According to the technical manuals, it was supposed to be impenetrable. A.E., perfect shield that had protected the academy for centuries. Maya ran diagnostics on the secondary systems and frowned at what she found. The power routing was inefficient, with several backup systems that had never been tested. The sensor array had blind spots that could be exploited. Most concerning of all, the main defensive computers were running software that had not been updated in over 200 years. Maya double-checked her readings. This was supposed to be the most advanced military installation in the galaxy, but its defenses had huge vulnerabilities. Any enemy with basic tactical knowledge could find ways through the protective systems. She saved her findings to a data pad and headed back to her room. Tomorrow she would report this to her instructors. They would want to know about these problems, even if the information came from a primitive Deathworlder. Ketris was already asleep when Maya returned, her crystalline form glowing softly in the dim light. Maya looked at her roommate and wondered if they would ever be friends, or if the prejudice ran too deep. She lay in her narrow bed and stared out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, with her family and friends who believed in her. She would not let them down. She would prove that humans deserved their place among the stars no matter what it took.